Tom, this idea of envisioning, I don't think that's going to be new for most people to hear. And, there's not a whole lot of things that are new out there, things we haven't heard, but are we actually grasping onto it? And it's just one that I think continues to grow more blatant in my own life is, can I see myself there? And to some degrees being okay sometimes with a goal, with something I think, I do want that, but I don't really see myself there. And that may be okay for right now. But if it's something I really want, can I see myself actually achieving it? And it's just so powerful. I think some people can have, kind of this hoodoo guru feel about that, envision yourself there. But I mean, we know that you've been in this industry longer than I have, but for both of us, all our lives, and just know that there is so much effort and money churning and burning in the self-help and personal development industry, because people, they kind of want something, but they can't really see themselves there. And you can spend forever there. You can spend decades, years, whatever, and not taking the time to sit down and go, okay, can I see myself there? And maybe even asking the question, why can't I? Uh, but yeah, what's been your experience just in your own life of, have you struggled with that? Have you had to take that captive of, hey, okay, here's something I want. Can I actually see myself as that person or having achieved that thing?
I've actually spent a lot of time on this in the last 3 or 4 months. 3 or 4 months ago, I actually came up with a quote and a quote posters saying, "We create the future we see." And it has to do with studying what's the future going to hold,
Yeah.
because the change is coming. So I was just looking up on my phone. I started listening to a new book today. So I went online and looked up Seth Godin's recommended reading list, because I'm a big fan of Seth, and if he's reading something, it's probably pretty good. And the book is called "Everything is
Figure
Figure Out."
outable.
Yeah.
Yeah. By Marie Forleo. Yeah. I've got the book.
Have you read it?
No, but I've got it. Do I get credit for that?
That's awesome. So
Thanks.
check it out. Check it out. So
Okay.
so this morning I'm doing my elliptical. I'm listening to the book, right? I'm doing my 2 for 1, drinking water 3 for 1. And she says in the book, this is in the first hour, she says, look around. Look around at your surroundings. What's in your hand? What are you holding on to? What are you touching? All of these different things. And she said, there are things around you that you're not even recognizing. There's electricity, there's plumbing, and then she said this. She said, everything that you can see and touch around you was somebody's thought
Yeah.
before it was physical.
That's great.
And so that was a real powerful anchor point. I mean, this mic that I'm speaking into, somebody had to think of this mic. So it existed in someone's mind before it actually became a physical thing. And that to me is there's nothing that we handle on a daily basis that's man-made that wasn't a thought first. And of course, as a believer, as a Christ follower, I would say the same thing about me and you, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were a thought first. And so is it true? It's powerful.
That's a great, I love the perspective. And so for those who will see the video, here's the book. Yeah, I think her, publicist, publishing company, somebody sent me the book, and we talked about having her on the show, and I think it got postponed or something like that. And then I just didn't follow up, but, man, I love that perspective of, if it, in essence, I'm going to paraphrase, if something is going to, if we're going to progress, that means we're going to make something exist. We're going to achieve something that we have not yet. And we have to envision that. I mean, my gosh, anybody who's created a business, they created a revenue producing entity from nothing. I actually went through that today, Tom. I was rewriting a bio, and I was about to write serial entrepreneur. And I thought, how many businesses have I started? And I actually went through and started listing them. And it's 14 businesses now that I've started from nothing. And those were something, yeah, they were nothing. I mean, they were a blank white piece of paper to the point that of making a dollar that paid my mortgage. And it's so interesting. They didn't exist. So yeah, back to this. Can we see it when we think of that thing? I'd really like to do. I'd really like to weigh 50 pounds less. I would like to make 50,000 more. I would like to live in that kind of a house. I'd like to drive that kind of a car. I would like to have that kind of influence. Can we really see it? And for me, it's been, I just signed finally the final book deal, and I've been talked to about writing a book for a long time. And when it came down to it, and this wasn't even, and I want to put this out there too, because when we say that, it sounds like a minimizing thing, like, oh, you think too little of yourself. You can't envision yourself doing that. And I want to say it's not always that. I have been a paid writer in truth, paid for my writing, not articles and whatnot, but for the things that I write that I then bring into fruition business wise. I've been paid for that for years. I got straight A's in English and won creative writing awards. I've always been writing, but I've never written a book. And I didn't really, it's not that I couldn't see that myself being able to do it. I didn't see myself doing what it would take. And I realized that. I just wasn't the time. I had other things I want to do. I want to create this. I want to create that. I didn't want to sit down and write a book. So I didn't see myself there. Then all of a sudden I had something that I felt like this is important. I need to, and now I can see myself doing what it takes and be that. And I've done that. So I want to give that differentiation too. It's not just that we're not talking about just a self-image thing of, oh, can you see yourself? That's another part of it. And I talk about this in the motive podcast that I have. I talk about this aspect of, can you see yourself doing what it takes? Because I think sometimes we realize it's just, it's not. I'm sure you've, Tom, had things like that. It's like, say, could you see yourself being there, achieving it? Sure. Can you see yourself doing what it would take to achieve that right now? Like, is the timing right? And I'm sure there's been some things for you. You go, no, not yet, not yet, but that ultimately
Absolutely.
do. Yeah.
Well, today is day 25 for me on my book writing commitment.
Discipline. Yeah.
And so I can see myself eating every day. And most of us can. And so all I did was with this book deadline is I said, I'm going to write 1,000 words a day before I eat anything.
Yeah.
And it's unbelievable how seeing myself eating inspires the writing.
Yeah. That's a good one for everybody. You can't eat until you make X deposit towards your goal this day. That may be the best motive of
It's
all time.
I wish it was more difficult or more complicated, but
Yeah.
I just you got to put the cookies on the lower shelf for me to really grab a hold and eat them.
I like it. Hey, whatever motivates you to produce. Well, so I did ask this and had a lot of people respond back. I asked, can you literally envision yourself achieving whatever that goal is? Che Murphy here, he says, I have a lot of aspirations, but I take them, I sit down with myself and really think through every single detail. I feel it. I try to feel it so deeply. And I know that it's already mine. I just need and must always keep the faith and high vibes to manifest it in the natural. Um, that sitting down with something. I mean, don't know how many times I comment on Blaise Pascal's quote of, one of man's greatest downfalls is the inability to sit in a room for 15 minutes by themselves. We have that, especially in this distraction culture right now, but to take a thought and just dwell on it. So for everybody out there, that right, what Che just said, to take that thing that you want and sit down facing a wall with your eyes closed, looking out at nature, whatever it may be, and just think. Maybe you need pen and paper, fingers and typewriter, whatever, or keyboard or whatever, and think, can you see yourself? And I think, again, I've talked about this recently in the Motive podcast. And the other side is, if you can't, why? Why can't you see yourself there? And that's often, I think, the most telling reason, because in my experience, anything that I'm looking at doing, somebody who had less going for them and far more going against them did it. Why can't I? And this isn't, I mean, your dad's famous for saying, positive thinking won't let you do anything, but it'll let you do everything better than positive thinking do. And it does. And he has the one story about, Shaquille O'Neal, as much as he might want to positively envision it, was never going to be a good jockey. I mean, it's just physically impossible to do that. So it's not that we can envision and do anything, but generally the things that we actually authentically desire, we are capable physically. There's a possibility, but can we see ourselves there? And if we can't, why not?
I think there's two things we have to consider. Okay, because we hear all this all the time. We hear about be self-aware, be mindful,
Right.
be present. Something that you really want. Okay, I think there's two essential things here for us to create the future we see. First is you got to really want it. But let me tell you something. You can want it like never before. And if you don't do the second thing, you're not going to get it. And the second thing is the noise. You got to turn off the noise. You've got to get rid of the distraction. And I think it goes back to the principle that it seems like I share every time, because it's another basic truth, is we've got to stop doing the wrong thing and then start doing the right thing. And a couple of years ago, I had an epiphany reading Getting Things Done. And the epiphany wasn't that you create all these to-do lists and you put it all on paper. I knew that. I just didn't know why. The reason is so your brain is empty and doesn't have to remember anything because it's on paper. So what does that do? The noise is gone. And we are created in God's image, which means that we are closest to God when we're creating. And what keeps us from creating, to me, is noise. Now, noise is my word for distraction, for the shiny object, for the squirrel, for the 25 good things that all get in the way of the great thing. And we get our self-worth in so many cases by checking all these boxes, by getting the endorphin, rush when we get a like on social media. I mean, it's crazy stuff. And so clearly seeing the future you want to create is the combination of seeing that future, but it has to be in the absence of noise. You can't have distraction, change, challenge, noise, everything draining you while you're doing it.
Yeah.
And so Shay, when he put that in, man, that's spot on.
Spot on. And that may be almost a paramount methodology, if I could say, for this. Now, here's one though that you will relate to. Jennifer says, I have a goal set for October 31st. So she's writing this. This is what, February. A goal set. She didn't say what it is, but I have Post-it notes on my mirror to help me envision the goal for the day today. I picture myself meeting the goal and how I will celebrate. I look at myself in the mirror and say the goal out loud. This is on Facebook, and somebody else then responded to that. Dan Brandenburgs. Dan, a great guy. I've known him forever. He is a professional photographer, and there was a time, I don't know where it sits now, but where he was one of the really big, his main income, it was a big income, came from photos for stock photo. It's pretty neat story. But Dan says, years ago, I did the same thing. I realized I was getting myself each morning with a lot of negative self-talk. So I decided to put Post-it notes on my mirror where I would usually see my face. Every morning, instead of starting the day with frustrations, I'd see my primary goals, and it made a huge difference. Dry erase markers also work. And it's interesting, they said that, and it was about 2 days ago. I think it's gone now. And we did family devotions in the morning, and the word that came out that my wife really pulled out was rejoice. Rejoice. Can we go through the day rejoicing? It's a different take on gratitude, but rejoice. And I am so aware of my propensity as a human to have that conviction there in the morning. Here we go. Take off, go out the door. And then my mind is gone and I am not present and I am not aware. And I get to the end of the day or the next morning. And then I realize, wait, what was that word we were going to, keep there at the forefront? So I wrote it with a Sharpie on the kind of the palm of my hand. And it was so great for helping bring me back to that every day. Well, obviously this is close to home for Ziglar when, Zig was such a proponent of self affirmations, those things that we remind ourselves of who I am or the kind of person I need to be to create that. And we speak it into being, in essence. I like that thought of just a prophetic thing towards myself. I am that person, or I'm going to be.
There's a famous story that Dad told, and it's in the Changing the Picture uh, program from How to Stay Motivated. And I think it was in the Born to Win series, but it's the Tom Hartman story.
Yeah. Okay. Of course.
And he came to an event. He was in terrible shape. He weighed probably 150 pounds too much, blah, blah, blah. So he buys the audio program, cassette tapes back then, listen to it over and over, hours a day. And he started picturing in his mind the physical shape that he was going to be. So in his mind, when he closed his eyes, he saw him as himself as a fit, weight, 150 pounds lighter, whatever it was. And then he tells two things. The first one, he was in the grocery store buying some food. And this is the beginning of it when he just started to program his mind. And this little girl, 5 years old, started yelling, "Mama, Mama, look at that fat man," pointing at him. And so he turned around to see who she was pointing at. And that's when he knew he'd already lost the weight. The second one is he was walking down the street, kind of dusk, looking at men's clothing, and he found this suit that he really wanted. And then he started to feel really uncomfortable, like some huge man was watching him. And then he realized it was the reflection in the window. And so his subconscious mind had already adopted what it is. So he goes in to buy some suits, I think the next day, and he buys them the size that he knows he's going to be and puts them on layaway. And the salespeople there were saying, "You're crazy." But the point is he'd spent so many hours reframing the vision he had of himself. Right? We create the future we see. So the future he saw of himself was this physical specimen.
I love the commitment. I had a friend many years ago now who was, not that this is again about weight, but just so happened to be a very large guy who wanted to lose weight, and he entered into a 5K like 6 months down the road. Paid the money, got his registration, told people about it, and then started walking during his lunch break. And before long, he's got a whole group of people walking with him, the accountability and envisioning himself. And then he bought registered for a marathon like a year and a half later. And I want to say the story was that, he bought the plane ticket and reserved the hotel. I don't know if you can buy plane tickets anymore that far out. Maybe you could back then, or maybe I just elaborated on the story. But bought the hotel. The point being, he committed to it and said he could see himself. We got a guy, Thomas, who posts on a lot of, I don't know if he posted on this one, posts on a lot of the questions that we do. And he is, again, he's a large guy, again, not to make it about that, but just so happens to be a good analogy, large guy who is seeing himself as a triathlete. And he is doing it. He buys the paraphernalia. He's sharing it with everybody. That is who he is becoming. And, love to see that. Chris Johnston pulls out a good point though here. He says, I can envision the goal, and maybe just, visioning it is a better word. Sometimes the steps to make it a reality are at best murky. Well, I appreciated the candor of that, but I also think it just puts out there something relevant. Tom, I've taken something and said, man, I want this. I believe I should go towards this. I can see myself there. No idea how I'm going to get there yet. As a starting point, though, we're talking about, can you see yourself there? So I would take that premise and give people permission to see yourself there, even if you don't know yet how you're going to do that. We are so great, especially the more intellectual, self-aware people at discounting ourselves. Would you not do that? You are not allowed to discount yourself. Just what is it that you want to go towards, that you think you should go towards, that you feel like you desire? Can you see yourself achieving it? The answer is yes. Great. That's the that's a holy grail. It's a big, primary pillar that we're talking about here. Let yourself do that, even though you may admit that you do not know how to get there yet. And Tom, I know you can get different personality style issues in here, but man, I don't know if there's anything that I set out and saw myself out that I already knew how I was going to do it. Most of the time, I feel like I'm figuring it out along the way. And to that degree of analysis paralysis, if there's anything new that we're going to, like you said, it doesn't exist yet, and we're going to go out here and envision it in our minds that it does exist, and it doesn't yet. Now, we can't, I've never had anything, I don't know if it exists, where you can exactly know how to do it. You could only see so far to then where you can see a little bit further. I mean, that's part of the process. So I think Chris brings out a really good point, and I want people to hear that, yeah, you do not have to know how it's going to work out or know the steps too. That's part of your process now. Once you can envision it, I mean, for that matter, Tom, I think one of the issues we're talking about here is how often we set something out there, start trying to figure it out how to do it. And yet we have not yet done this first piece of, can you really see yourself there? And if not, then I think that's where we see so many people just churning and burning for years and never really making the progress towards that thing because they've never seen themselves there. What do you think?
Reminds me of another Zig story. A lot of people in the heyday of Dad's career would say, "Oh, he's a motivational speaker. He's all fluff and rah rah." And there was this academic PhD guy, I believe, if I'm remembering the story right. And he came in and he said, "I just need to tell you all something." He said, I kind of thought most of the stuff was just fluff. And he said, so I was listening to the recording and I started outlining it. And he said, this is unbelievable. It's like every story, every illustration, every point is a foundation on a foundation on a foundation. It's all relevant. And so Dad had this great quote regarding this one subject right here. He said, anything worth doing is worth doing poorly until you learn to do it well.
Love that quote. Yeah.
Well, in our legacy certification, where speakers and trainers come in to be equipped to go out and teach our material, and also in our coaching that we license people to go and coach our material, a lot of times a performance planner is part of that program. They get the Ziglar Performance Planner, which is a year-long book where you follow the 20 pages of goal setting instructions to write all your goals out. And I'm used to it. And to me, it's no big deal. But I would say, Kevin, that close to 25% when we meet back up with them again 3 months later, how many of you started in your planner? 25% will say, no, I haven't. And we're like, why not? It would be like you getting a new racing bike that, is 50% lighter and 20% faster. And somebody's like, how's it ride? And you're like, I don't know. I'm riding the old one. Uh-huh. And so we would ask them, why haven't you done it? Well, I'm not sure I'll get it right. You can't get it wrong. Uh-huh. And so we would say, look, here's the thing. It's your planner. If you lose it, you can get a new one. If you fill it out wrong, the next day you fill it out right. You can use any color you want. You don't have to stay in the lines. Just start using it. Only do one goal. And just, even if you only spend a minute in a day, just get started. And all of a sudden, it's like the weight of perfection gets dropped off. And so I think this last comment is speaking a little bit to that. Yeah, I've got this vision and I can really see it, but what if I take the wrong step? What if I don't do it right? I think the better question is, can you really do it wrong?
I love that statement. Okay. So at risk of nobody listening to the show again, check it out, Tom. Those in the video can see this.
That's
Performance
like an
planner.
original version right
This
there.
is circa, this is March 19th, 1987. See the autograph there by your dad?
There you go.
There's the autograph. See you at the top, Zig Ziglar, Ephesians 2:8-9. So that's on that page. Here's the first page, got my personal information on it.
All right. So far, so good.
Kevin Miller. So where I grew up in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Here's the personal commitment. I got that filled out. 21st day of March, 1987. That's it. It's a pristine historical piece right here that I never did. It was so precious to me. I couldn't get myself to write anything at the time. Now, thank goodness I did some other things right, like continuing to listen to Zig Ziglar. And I now have, there's other performance planners over there, but that one, yeah, I did that. In all shame, here you go.
There you go. Well, in all fairness, we do have a money back guarantee.
Okay. Can I say, but if I can't say it, here I am hosting the Ziglar show. I can't say it didn't work.
You don't qualify. You have to work. You have to fill out every page. And if at the end of the year,
Oh, right.
if it wasn't worth the $50 that you paid for it,
Yeah.
we give you your $50 back. We've
Okay.
never had one returned.
Never had one return. Well, there you go. So, so funny, well, and there you go. The envisioning, I will say that I grew the ability to envision myself at my goal. So even though I didn't always do the steps well and fill out my performance planner, I at least got that much out of the Zig Ziglar philosophy. And here I am today. Here's a neat one. Faye, she says, I have written a detailed dream. One aspect shows me sitting at a desk, writing my annual $100,000 checks to 10 different ministries that I love and support. This means my business is thriving profitably and I can help others because of it. It reminded me of the story I've heard multiple times of Jim Carrey. Most people know the actor, comedian, Jim Carrey, and he tells a story. You can find it online where he wrote, I don't remember what the timeline was, but wrote a check to himself for $10 million for acting. I think it was like acting services rendered or services rendered, something like that. And then he tells a story of how long later, I don't remember the timeline, it was that he received a check for $10 million for services rendered for one of his roles in, Ace Ventura or The Mask. I don't remember what it was. But yeah, that aspect, but we hear that and give lip service to it and nod at it. But do we really do it? Do we really write down our name with published author or with paid speaker or with doctor or lawyer or with wonderful father and esteemed mother or whatever that title is, that goal is, that label is? Can we see it? And again, I'm going to pull us back to that. And if you can't, why can you not? And there are some, aspects of some disciplines that we can do to help us, like the, Ziglar self-talk cards and self-affirmation. Dion here, he says, it helps me to write it down in my journal for clarity and then make it a habit to read the written goals and have accountability partners to journey with. Nick Unsworth, we had him on the show a few months ago now, and he had an incredible story. I don't have the episode in front of me, but if you type in Nick Unsworth and the Ziglar Show, you'll find it. Incredible story of him writing down some goals, some achievements that he wanted to do that he really had no business attaining with what he could see at the moment, with what anybody else could see in the moment, and them happening. And if you listen to the story, happening in some dramatic fashions, coming to fruition. And, you talked about a faith-based aspect, Tom. Depending on where your faith is, is there some supernatural abilities here? I think so. But so much of it, even outside of that, is just getting ourselves to believe. What can we do to get ourselves to believe that we can actually do XYZ? And the thing I want to call attention to is how many of us have that thing that we think we want, we say we want, we would say it's a goal, and we're again putting so much effort. We're listening to podcasts, reading blogs, reading books, going to seminars to figure out how to do it. And we haven't, like Chase said at the beginning of the show, we haven't sat down. Again, look out the window, close your eyes, get a journal out, whatever, and said, can I really see myself there. And if you can, great, write about it, set it down, put it in concrete. And if you can't, asking yourself, why can't I see it, and get to the root issue, which is my focal point with all the shows we do here. Get to that root issue. If you've got a goal that's been out there for a long time, I'm going to gather that this is a primary piece of it. You don't really, again, see yourself there, or Tom, again, I like that. To me, I think it's a relevant other piece, or you just don't see yourself doing what it takes. But I'm going to caveat that with what you think it takes. And Tom, I'm sure you've experienced that, maybe yourself, definitely with other people, where they put that thing out there and say, yeah, but what it would take is X, Y, Z. And they're saying that in reference to somebody they've been exposed to. And this is what that person had to do it. I have so often found with myself and others that that is not always a true depiction of what it takes. That's what it took for that person. It may take something different for you. And again, that's another way of really opening the door to a different possibility, to a bigger probability, is not assuming that what it took for somebody else to achieve XYZ is what it will take for them, which is hard because we're in a day and age where you say, hey, this is what I achieved. Here's my book that tells you how to achieve it just like I did. Go do it. And we get wrapped up, I think. Is that a fair, sometimes in an errant perspective of what it really does take for you?
You know, we put expectations on ourselves. We assume what it will take. We think it's going to be harder than it is. A great story. One of our ZLCers, his name is Alan O'Neill, and
No, Alan.
yes, so he's from Ireland, and back in the green card day, he entered the green card lottery, and he got picked. So he and his wife moved to the U.S. and he was a plumber, and so he comes over here and he gets a plumber's job. And they taught him a little, I'm not sure exactly what he was doing, but they taught him a sales script, and he would go into the appointment and he would do the script, and then they would say yes, and then he would do the work. Well, his whole mindset was America was the land of milk and honey. This is the opportunity place of the world.
What is it? The immigrant's advantage?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The immigrant's edge. I
Edge.
think,
Okay.
yeah, Brian Buffini wrote that book, The Immigrants, and he's from Ireland too. So maybe it's an Irish thing. So he's doing this, and I can't remember, but it seemed like it was like 90 days, 2 or 3, appointments a day. And his sales success was 100%. And so the sales manager came in and said, we need to meet. And he said, what for? He said, well, I want to learn what you're doing. And so he told him, and he said, he kind of said, well, what do you mean, what am I doing? I'm doing what you told me to do. And the sales manager said, well, nobody closes 100%. So Alan said he went on a sales call right after that, and it missed his first sale. That is like, I mean, just think about that.
The psychology of, what would that be? That possibility of failure creeping in there.
So now he's a partner in a group called the Wrench Group, and I think there's 3 different very large plumbing and groups underneath him. And so his success has been amazing. But he said, what a lesson to learn.
Yeah.
That the way we think about it is probably how it's going to happen.
I recently had a guy, it was last weekend, we were at a social event. He was talking about trying to help his wife mountain bike, which is one of my avid joys. And she said something to the effect of, yeah, I'm afraid I'm going to go over into that ditch. She says, well, don't look over there. We end up going wherever wherever we look. So mountain biking, don't look where you want to go. Don't look where you don't want to go. And again, great perspective for this topic. And back to what I said a minute ago, I have so often seen sometimes, and I'm going to stumble over trying to say this correctly because it sounds, uh, it could sound elitist, but sometimes the more self-aware people who are pursuing and understanding, and I would say, intellectual people are the first to discount themselves. And then I have seen the spoils, if you will, success go to some people because they didn't know. Dummy didn't know any better than to know he couldn't do it. Really. And Tom, I've literally had some experiences with that where it really just put me in my seat, seeing somebody achieve something that I did not give much credit to. And the person just didn't know any better. Well, I'm astute enough, I'm insightful enough to know the reasons why I couldn't do it. And I didn't do it. Well, son of a gun, that didn't help me much, did it? We discount ourselves. So to go out there and again, look at that objective and go, can you envision yourself? Don't discount that. I've done that with people of saying, okay, we're going to take 30 minutes, take that journal and take 30 minutes to come up with all the reasons why you could do it, how you could do it. If you had to, if a gun's to your head, write down the ideas. If at the end of that 30 minutes, you can't come up with enough things, then maybe it's not best for you. Maybe it's not for you. And, kind of like what you said about the performance planner that's never been returned. Seldom do people get to the end of that without having some legit ideas that seem palatable to them of ways that they could do it, that they could see themselves achieving that. Man, just such a powerful, it's such a pithy perspective here in the personal development, self-help world, such a pithy perspective of can you envision yourself? And yet I think it's one of those that we just don't give enough gravity to, and we miss it. And I'm going to say it again. And we have that thing that we think that we want, we put it out there and we spend time and money going after the steps to achieve it. And we're getting the next book, the next online course, the next online group, the next mastermind, the next whatever. And I'm not dissing any of those, but when you see yourself churning through those things and it not making progress, if you sat down, like Chase said again, we're going to make him the star of the show, sat down and just seen yourself there. And if not, why? That's one of my favorite perspectives. Why not? And seldom can we come up with a reason.
When I think of the word noise, I think it's also what we choose to hear. So when Dad was brand new in cookware sales, stainless steel cookware, door to door, he was being trained, and his manager at the time was named Randy Manning. And so all these years later, when I was about 16 or 17, I got to play golf with Dad and Randy Manning. And Randy Manning was, a good 25 years older than Dad. So, 20. So Dad tells me this Randy Manning story. So they had this dinner party. This guy was at the party and he said, yeah, I'm interested in the cookware. I have no money. You'll have to come out to my farm the next day. And so Randy went with him, and Randy said, don't say anything, just listen. So they go into this farm, and the farmer's out in the front doing some stuff, and he's got an old t-shirt on, and he's got the big overalls. And Dad's looking around, and there's a broken down car over here, and the farmhouse doesn't look so good. And the guy says, oh, so you're here. And he says, yeah. And Randy says, I'm here about what we talked about last night. And the farmer, and of course, Dad had been told, don't say anything. So the farmer starts off and he said, yeah. He said, I've been thinking about it. We had a bad crop last harvest, and I just had to put all the money in for the seed for this year. And my two youngest twins just got braces. So that was a big hit. And that car right there just broke down. That's why it's up on blocks. And my wife is expecting again. And he gave like 6 or 7 excuses. And Dad said, Randy just nodded his head. And then when the guy was quiet, he said, so I suppose you want to do cash.
I like the assumptive sale. It's my favorite.
And he said, the farmer reached into the center pocket in his overalls and pulled out the biggest wad of cash he'd ever seen in his life
Beautiful.
and said, yeah, we'll just have to do cash. And so that's what happens is the world gives us this feedback that says, not now, wait, it's not perfect. They're not going to say yes, don't do it. And we pass up the opportunity to say, I guess you just want to pay cash.
I like it.
And that's a huge thing.
Yeah.
It's like when there's something important that you want to do that's going to change the trajectory of your life, and all of a sudden something pops up on your screen. You have the choice right then to say, nope, I'm going to do what's important first, then I'll do that. Or I better go do that because people might think something of me if I delay it.
Yeah.
And that's the difference in so many cases. It's shutting out the noise.
Yep. Yep. Here, I'll end us with a good quote. This is Dan Brandenburg, who I mentioned before. He was quoting Richard Bach. You're never given a dream without also being given the power to make it true. You may have to work for it, however. And that's what we're talking about here, the work of sitting down and envisioning yourself achieving it, being there, having whatever it is. There's your first step that we often miss. And as always, Tom, I'm always speaking to myself as well. I continue to do this also. So plenty for us to learn. All right. Well, let's go envision us doing something great. Deal?
Deal.